And good evening. It's June 10th, 2013, and I'd like to welcome you to yet another edition of the Columbus Report. We are live tonight and very fortunate to have with us at the round table Representative Connie Pillich of the 28th District. Connie, welcome back.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
It seems like only yesterday we were here.
It does.
It's so true. We had promised at the end of that show that we would come back and discuss a few things, and it just so happened that this month opened up that we could continue that conversation. So, welcome back.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
very
you so
welcome.
much.
Of course, this is a live evening, so I'd encourage you to all join in. If you weren't with us the last time, well, come on aboard this time. 825-3971 is our phone number. Live at waycross.org is the email address. All your questions answered here tonight. Come on and join the fun. Of course, when we last spoke, we were discussing so many different things, and some things we'll touch back on. But of course, the last thing we discussed, which was probably the most fun thing that we were starting to discuss, was your progression with the Ohio Service Corps to introduce a new fellowship to help volunteerism within the state of Ohio. Where are we today? Now, last we did, you were just in those talking moments with the John Glenn School and a couple other areas. Where are we today?
Well, my idea for the Ohio Service Corps was to build upon my commitment to public service and to attract graduating college seniors into public service. You know, I have a military background, so I'd love everyone to go in the military, but that's not going to happen. But there are so many other ways you can give back to your community, and keeping people here in Ohio to help in a nonprofit would be one way. And I had introduced legislation to create an Ohio Service Corps to attract these young college graduates, let them work for 2 to 3 years, and we would pay them a tiny little bit of money and then help pay down their student debt. So I introduced that last session, and I was getting ready to introduce it this session, but the Ohio Commission on Service and Volunteerism learned about the bill and came to see me. And so they're very interested, and they decided to run with it. Okay. Before I introduced it again, they decided to create a fellowship based on this model. And so the initial discussions we had last time I was here was just the very beginning of bringing different people. We had the Ohio Nonprofit Association, we had the John Glenn School, we had the Commission on Volunteerism, Service and Volunteerism, and me in the same room talking about how we could shape this. So now the gears are working and we're in a planning stage.
Excellent.
And we hope that something like this can be up and kicking maybe by next year.
That'd be great. Now, is this something that has happened before, that someone hears of a bill, maybe not to this, whichever degree, and actually says, no, before you do that, let's talk about this and let's create something different? Because now you're outside of, from what I'm gathering, is outside that legislative body a little bit, and now it's in a nonprofit status as opposed to where you may have led it if it would have gone to the House.
Yeah, of course the difference is if I had introduced legislation and if it had passed, it would be a law that we must have this. Although the way I worded it, it was a little bit looser than that.
Sure.
But it would create the structure. By not having, there's nothing in the laws that prevent anyone from doing this. So the idea came up, and the Commission on Service and Volunteerism thought it was a great idea. And so they started pulling people to the table. And so I'm very hopeful that it'll go forward. And you're absolutely right. This is outside the legislative realm, and I'm really glad it is, because let's try it out. Because it does sometimes take a little while to pass a bill.
Well, and it is something, again, that I've not seen that has happened in this regards. We're now...
You're going to see it again.
Oh, are we?
Later today.
And how is that? We'll come back on that one then.
Yeah, but it's great that this agency, this government agency, decided to just take it and walk forward with it. And I'm really, really pleased that they're working on it, and that's great.
Now, of course, we're talking about something called Ohio Service Corps. The name will probably change. It's something that we can at least use it as a discussion point. When people hear it, people probably think, or at least I did, think that it's similar in the regards to the Peace Corps or something like that, but obviously Ohio-based. What are we looking for some of these high school, college graduates to go out and do?
Well, that's the key. So what the coordinator of this program, and this fellowship would probably be coordinated by the John Glenn School, which already does some of this stuff because it's a public policy school. They would coordinate with different nonprofits in Ohio, and that's why the Nonprofit Association executive director is at the table. They would find places that have a need for a young college graduate who has a degree, so therefore has credentials and has a willingness and a desire and an eagerness to serve, to be in public service and to do this cheaply. For the nonprofit, it may be
especially
free.
For working with nonprofit, absolutely.
So it may be cost-free to the nonprofit, or they may donate. We don't know the final picture yet, so they may subsidize some of it. But, they get a person for 2 years, and that's a significant chunk of time, and maybe 3 years if the young person wants to do that. It's a significant amount of time that they can train them to fill a position for a pretty good amount of time. Like when you have a summer intern, you barely get them trained, and then you lose them back to their school. So it's a little bit more challenging.
If you get them for 6 to 8 weeks, you're right. You may get them up to speed. They may not understand all of your terms and policies, but as you're saying, 2 years.
Yeah, they can do real work instead of intern level work. They can do real professional work, and so the hope is that that when the Glenn School starts seeking out partners, they reach out to all the nonprofit agencies in the state. We know who they all are. They were all registered, and we talk to them about developing a position that a participant would be able to fill.
So as we were saying earlier, that this is something we're hopeful to see possibly next year. You're talking not school year 2013-2014, but maybe school year 2014-2015.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So really, if it's be for a graduate, so whoever graduates in 2014, it's a little hard to know how long it will take to plan it because it takes resources to plan this. But I think if we put a good plan together, I think it'd be wonderful. My vision. I'm a big fan of public service.
Yes.
I grew up in a family where public service is what we did, and I didn't know there was any other way to live, and that's why I joined the Air Force. That's why I did Volunteer Lawyers for the Poor. That's why I ran for office. But I think it enhanced my life in such a great way, and I hope that I've given back to the community. And I think so many young people would get so much out of it, become better citizens, no matter what career path they take afterwards, if they started out doing this. And that's the best time. I think there are probably 2 times for people to volunteer, right after college or after they retire.
I think
when
that's
they have
fair.
The most time.
The most time to do it. And dare I say, at that point, they have a little more play time to be able to say, yes, this is working, no, this isn't, as opposed to, say, maybe going into your latter years before retirement when playing around like that's probably not the wisest decision, especially in the economy that we're in.
Right, yeah. People have families, they've got to work, yeah. But when you're young and you're used to being poor because you're a college student, it's a good, let's be poor a couple more years and do some good work.
An extra couple dollars for ramen noodles is always a good thing.
That's right, that's right.
Now, obviously, we're talking about most nonprofits, so this sounds like it can range from any kind of service. We're not just talking, I'm going to use the proverbial Peace Corps digging ditches. We're talking from technical sides to clerical sides to anything.
They could be working at Gorman Heritage Farm over in Evendale, raising chickens, or they could be up in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic, doing research or something like that. It could be so many things, and it would be up to each nonprofit organization to decide what kind of position could be filled, and then present it to the John Glenn School. And I think it's a great idea.
It's I can see the excitement in your eyes, and I can see that it is definitely a project that you really cannot wait to move forward. Again, we know when we're hoping for a goal date on those. It sounds like you're looking at a 2-year commitment for this individual. Now, obviously, you still have a lot of things to work out, and of course, my first thing is well, what if something doesn't work out in regards to the student? I mean, I'm assuming these are probably things we'll discuss later as things implement. But my first thought is, what happens if sometimes jobs don't work out right?
Well, that's something that will have to be decided. But first of all, the application process is going to be competitive because there's not going to be a large number of these positions available in the beginning. So, my dream of everyone going into public service for 2 years after high school or college we're not there yet. But,
no.
But so, there may be 20. So they're going to be pretty competitive, and it's going to be someone who really wants to succeed. And the Glenn School will have the task of fitting people appropriately, given their academic pursuits, their hobbies, their extracurriculars, fitting it with that nonprofit. And, yes, people don't always work out, and then they would have to be replaced.
Sure.
But I think if it's done carefully, it's going to be rare. But the key, I think, here is having someone for 2 years or even 3, if that's what they wanted to do. That's such a significant amount of time that they can be a real valuable asset to that nonprofit organization.
Other than obviously the labor that comes with it for the nonprofit, what do you see as benefits for the nonprofit? I mean, obviously that's got to be another side of this factor. I mean, obviously the progression and the molding that we're able to give the student forward, but the business also has to have a little bit of a side of it too.
Well, clearly the student's going to get so many benefits, or the participant will get so many benefits. But the nonprofit certainly is going to save a lot of money getting a full-time employee for either free or a nominal amount of money. But they're also going to grow their organization in a way they couldn't have before. They're going to bring in a new person with new ideas, new energy, new creativity. And frankly, I think when young people work in a nonprofit, they're going to want to continue to be involved in nonprofits long through their adult life. And whether it's as a volunteer or as a real a regular wage employee in the future, the agency's going to benefit.
And I think you see that, as you know here, we're a nonprofit as well, and so we thrive, and we're thankful for all of our volunteers. So to have something like this is appealing to us as well, but as appealing to the entire state of Ohio. The key to this is what I'm really liking is being able to keep people in the state, which is one of the key things that you at the State House have been trying to do, as well as everybody within the State House. How do we keep these people here? And with our young people and our college-age students here.
With the astronomical cost of education, whether it's public or private, and we all know that even state schools in Ohio are pretty expensive. And I'm going to be living that dream in August when my son goes to Ohio State. But we don't want our young people to move away. The health of any organization, whether it's Waycross or the PTA or the Rotary or whatever your agency is to bring talented young people in. And so it's the same is true for the state.
Sure.
But if they have debt and they may be tempted to go elsewhere, this is a way for us to entice them. Say, look, why don't you come into this very prestigious program? It's going to look good on your resume. You're going to get all these benefits. You're going to learn all these skills, and we'll help you with your student loans up to whatever that dollar amount is that they decide upon. Sure. And that could make a significant impact on that young person and get them committed. Now, look, this is one program. And I don't know of any other state that's doing this, so it's kind of a neat thing.
That would have been my next question. Who else has done this, or have we seen this before?
Well, we have AmeriCorps, which is a national program.
Sure.
And it's very similar, but this is going to be targeted towards college graduating seniors. But we need to do more than this to keep our young people in the state. We have to adopt policies at the state level that say we want young people here. We want to encourage you to settle here. We want to have entertainment for young people in their 20s. We want to have opportunities for job growth, for developing their own business, for them to buy housing that they can afford at their wages. And we got to do all these things, and we've also got to have policies in the state legislature that tells young people, we want you to stay here. And of course, we're not seeing that very much right now.
Again, we've discussed this before, is that we've not seen many people stay. And I did make the grand assumption that this was targeted towards students who are actual Ohio residents. Am I mistaken in that, or is this going to be solely if you are an Ohio resident going to an Ohio school, or am I went out of state, someone comes in from Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, wherever, into an Ohio school, are they eligible for this?
My initial idea was targeting Ohio students. But I'm not sure how it'll pan out since it's out of my control now.
Sure.
I'm not sure how it'll pan out. But I think, one of the reasons I created it was to attract Ohioans.
Sure.
Now, and I want we talked about the cost of student debt. One of the first things I did after I got elected and before I took office was to meet with the Chancellor of the Board of Regents to talk about student loan opportunities, to try to make them affordable, make the payments for these kids something reasonable that they could do. I remember my student loans, and I didn't have that many because I had my ROTC scholarship and I worked all the time. But I still had some because it costs a lot of money to live.
Yeah.
And even though I've lived very, very frugally, but I wanted to find ways. And most student loans are governed by federal law, and there wasn't much we could do about that. And so this is one of my ideas to try to help students deal with that and stay here.
As we both know, it's a big relief to have that debt removed and to be able to move forward. Not to say that it's an anchor for any college graduate or anything like that, but it does kind of put a damper on where you want to go and what you want to do. So to be able to have something that's enticing to say, hey, if you stick around and we'll help you out, you can help us too and help your state.
Yes. And
So
it's the
again,
perfect time before most kids get married and settle down.
Sure.
Let's do this as a public service.
Well, it sounds like, again, as we discussed the last time, as we just touched on it, that we're moving into something really new, great new territory. You just said we're in the planning stages. So when do you think we'll start to see some concrete, maybe some walls to the foundation of this new venture?
It's a little hard for me to say since it's now taken out of the legislative hands. So,
Good point.
I think it'll be a few months, and then maybe I'll have some more to tell you.
Well, you had teased a little bit that this wasn't the only thing that was going to be outside of that. Would you care to elaborate a little bit on this?
Oh, well, I have another bill. It's a bill to help student athletes.
Sure.
And I introduced it as House Bill 180.
Yes.
And like a lot of things, I know where you're going, but we'll get there. It's very surprising to me, but cardiac arrest is the #1 cause of death of student athletes. And who would have known? We had a wonderful young man at Sycamore High School who was a great swimmer. He had sudden cardiac arrest. It was devastating to the community. There have been other students in Ohio, others in other states. And so I thought it was appropriate to provide training to parents and coaches to understand what's going on, what the symptoms are, and what the signs are for them to be aware of this. So I introduced House Bill 180, and the Ohio High School Athletic Association caught wind of it, and they're very excited about it. One of my friends, a Republican senator, Cliff Height, saw my bill. He called me up and said, Connie, I love your bill. I want to introduce it over here in the Senate. I said, that's great. And next thing you know, the Athletic Association is looking at it, and they're thinking of just implementing it without legislation.
Wow.
So this happens. Not everybody reads every bill that gets introduced,
Sure.
but I was lucky that mine have been read, and that somebody thinks another agency thinks this is a good idea that they ought to implement on their own.
I mean, obviously there was a bit of a tie because of Sycamore High School, and there is that closeness for you. And here is another person, a senator on the other side, which, again, we don't hear that often, and by the way, was also a different party.
Yeah.
As we've always said, you extend your hand on any side.
I sure do.
Here it comes, the handshakes are coming together, but
Yeah.
as we saw in the last bill, outside forces are saying, we don't necessarily need legislation, we'll just start enacting it ourselves.
That's true. That's true.
So-
And I frankly like that.
I was just going to say, one, is that something, obviously this isn't something that you see every day, however, does that make life easier for you? Or two, does it make it a little more difficult going, well, there goes my job?
No, that's not the only part of my job.
No, I'm just kidding. But,
Yeah, I understand, but some people think we enact too many laws. But these are both great ideas that can enhance the quality of life in our state and help young people, and I'm just very flattered that members of the executive branch are willing to move forward with this.
Something like this in House Bill 180, looking at something as specific as student athletes, this would be something that I would have imagined, like the OHSAA taking a little bit more a handle on, as opposed to the Ohio branches of legislation. Again, you're tied to the school, I can understand that, and that's one thing, but were that not to have happened, would we have ever seen something like this today, next month, 2 years from now? Because, we, as we said, started this.
If I didn't have a personal experience?
Correct.
Yes, because I'm hearing from others who've had personal experiences, and they've contacted my office. I think they contacted my office in response to this bill, and I think they would have eventually gotten around to contacting someone. And, sometimes people will write an email to everyone in the legislature, and only one person says, "Ooh, that's a bill I want to work on." So I'm sure that this would have gone forward in some fashion at some point.
What seems to surprise me as well is that as many times as we've heard of some of these instances, a couple of years ago, I will say 2 or 3 years ago, it was heat and a lot of the intense heat that was going on. And then, of course, helmet laws. And again, I'm dealing only with student athletes at this point. You would have expected, we did receive heightened awareness and maybe some education, but never did I see something go to something to this extent, that this is where we need to focus so that our young athletes can continue doing what they enjoy doing, but also without risk of anything fatal happening.
Yeah, well, there was a bill just a few weeks ago that was to train parents, coaches, and referees on concussions. And football's not the only sport where people collide. They collide in about all these other sports. And we've started to, science doesn't sit still. Scientific research continues, medical research continues, and so we're learning so much more about how serious these problems are for student athletes. And so we have to respond. And so there's now a bill that would require coaches and parents and refs to have some training and to not return a child who has a concussion or exhibits signs of a concussion without some sort of medical professional looking at them, whether it be a nurse or an EMT or a doctor, etc.
And
so these are things that we're trying to. It's good policy, but it's not being done. So that's why the legislature ought to.
I was just going to say, is this why someone has decided, I'm going to go above and beyond and make sure that this gets looked at and taking it to the House?
Yeah. Sure.
Again, as you said, good policy.
Yeah. And the chair of the Health Committee, another Republican, likes this bill. He and I are working on 2 bills together, if collaborating in some fashion. Yeah. So, I love bringing ideas, and you know what I do, because I know it's a political world and Democratic bills don't always go forward. I usually talk to the chair or talk to someone on the other side of the aisle and say, would you like to work on this bill? And sometimes they say, no, you bring it in, or sometimes they say yes, or sometimes they'll say, I'll do it with you, or whatever. And in the case of House Bill 180, Senator Cliff Height said, I'll introduce it in the Senate for you. I said, okay, let's do it.
And so,
move forward.
Obviously this was introduced at the end of the month in May. We're 10 days into this month. Where are you seeing this going? Obviously, you have Senate support at this point. Where is it in the Senate? Where is it in the House currently? And when do you expect to see?
I have not had my first hearing yet on this bill. I've talked to the committee chair about it, so I hope that we'll have one. It's not yet been introduced in the Senate. Senator Height asked me about it, and of course the courteous thing is to call the bill's original sponsor and talk about how that could happen. So he's having it drafted over there, but I don't know how far we're going to go. If the High School Athletic Association decides to do it on their own, we may just let this sit on the shelf.
And of course, as we start to think as well, your summer break is on its way. So
one can only hope. But we have one small little bill to take care of.
And we'll discuss that, of course. If you are joining us on June 10th, 2013, I encourage you to join in, because we're going to get into something that you're going to want to talk about. So come on in, 825-3971, live at waycross.org. One way or another, come on and join us. We're having fun. I know you will too. Of course, Of course, we do have that one little bill to discuss.
Yeah.
It always seems to be the every 2 years, and here we are.
And that's the state budget.
Yes.
The biggest bill we do, 4,500 pages, 138,000 lines. It's vast. It's challenging to read, let alone understand. And it appropriates all the funds for all the state's operations for 2 years. So it's really the most important bill we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's the most far-reaching.
I mean, I know that we say this a little jokingly, only because of the vastness that it is and how things happen. And of course, here we are. I mean, 2 years ago, we were asking for extensions.
Yeah.
And this year, your thoughts? Where are we?
Well,
where are we currently? Because no one has really said where we are.
Okay.
And we need to have this finalized by the end of the month.
Right. So the House passed the budget out of the House. We passed our version. I mean, I voted against it because it had a lot of bad stuff and didn't do enough good stuff. But it was passed nevertheless, I think it was April 24th, and went over to the Senate. And they've had many, many weeks of hearings. And they had many, many amendments. And then they had hearings on their amendments. They passed it out of the Senate after, I think, 8 hours of debate on Thursday, just last week. So that would have been, what, June 6th?
June 6th, yes.
Okay, so they passed it out June 6th. So, end of the day, it gets sent to the clerk's office. We got to wait till we come back on to session on Wednesday, June, let's see, what date? So June 12th. June 12th, it'll be brought up on the agenda, and what will likely happen is we will reject their version, and what we say is we insist on our own version of the bill, and we move that the bill goes to a conference committee. Okay. So the conference committee is usually made up of 3 people from each chamber, and the majority party chooses 2 and the minority chooses 1. So there will be 4 Republicans and 2 Democrats on this conference committee, and they will hammer things out. And it's a political world, so probably the 4 Republicans will hammer it out with the governor, and the 2 Democrats will be wondering when's the meeting, because that's what happened last time. They weren't always told when the meeting was, and if we're lucky, we get told what the discussions are and what the results will be, and have enough time to read it before we vote on it.
So
I anticipate that June 22nd, is that a Thursday? I think, that last week, or the 27th, the 21st, 27th, something like that. I think that'll be a really long day in the State House.
Because let's face it, no one wants to stay over. No one likes staying over at work, and no one likes to stay over at school. Right. So, obviously they want to get it done. But the idea behind it is obviously getting something out there that is, to use the term fair and balanced, or at least fair.
Yeah, that would be my wish.
Well,
here's what the problem is.
I was just going to say, what is the holdup that we feel?
There are, it's a vast bill. There are some good things in there. There are things in there I support, but the things that are the largest items, like funding public education, they increased it a little bit, but it doesn't reach the levels that we had just a few years ago in the 2010 budget. 2009, we passed in June of 2009. It doesn't restore funding to local governments who are screaming and crying. They're writing me every day, why are you doing this to us? We've been good stewards of our money. We don't give raises to our people. We lay people off. We don't have any money. You took our money. You've taken our money. You've taken our money and used it to balance the budget. Now you've got a surplus. Can we have our money back so we can mow the lawn in the public areas, we can fix our fire trucks, so we can pay our police officers, so we can keep our streets safe? I mean, we're talking the basic services, which are still going to be lacking under this budget. And of course, education. That's one of my biggest issues, and it's the number 1 issue in my district. So there are a lot of bad things, and there are so many other things. They chose not to put Medicaid expansion in there, which would help so many people. And let me tell you who's come to talk to me, okay? All right, certainly the social service agencies talk to me because they want to help the poor. Healthcare providers, other health professionals, hospitals, individual doctors, nurses, people dealing with mental health, small businesses, big businesses, the Chamber of Commerce, just everyone wants this except for the Tea Party faction that's in the legislature, and I feel like they're holding the legislature hostage. Now, we could pass in a separate bill, if we wanted, Medicaid expansion. We got enough votes, but the governor and the Speaker of the House want to have enough Republican votes so that they can say, well, the majority of the Republicans supported it, and they want to use it as a campaign issue. And I'm really getting tired of the politics with these important issues. They want to have something they can write home about. That's why they do some of the crazy things they do. Well, my district will really like it if I talk about this issue. It's not that it's an issue that needs to be done, but we want to get them excited about me. They want something to write home about, and I think that's just terrible, terrible policy. The party in charge has the responsibility to govern, not to be political. They need to govern. And to govern, you just got to stand up tall. You got to have a little backbone. You got to do the right things. Their job, they wanted this job. It's their job to govern, but instead they're being political and they're playing politics. They're playing politics with veterans. They're playing politics with children. They're playing politics with young women, playing politics with children's health care, with the elderly. I mean, all these groups that need just the basic services. We're not getting anybody rich. We're not treating them special, but they're going to play politics with it.
And you
want me to tell you what I really think?
I wondered about that. Because most people will hear that when it comes to health care and the ideas of putting it in so that everybody can get it, so that the national health care can go through or Obamacare can go through, is that they want to make sure that they had a contingency plan in case it doesn't work out, they have a means out.
And they do. There are multiple sources that tell us that they can get out. First of all, Secretary Sebelius, the one who's running this show, testified under oath that there would be a way to opt out if Congress changed its mind. And there have been the Office of Health Transformation Director has assured us that we'll be able to opt out. The agencies in Washington that are managing and administering this program tell us that we're going to be able to opt out if something goes wrong in the future. But to not do this now, and when you think of what's the penalties small businesses will pay.
Well, and that's where I was going to say.
Aside from the moral reason to do it, the fiscal reason to do it is also huge. They're going to be paying $50, $80 million in penalties
if they don't comply.
If they don't comply, and because they probably can't afford to give health insurance to all of their low-wage employees, which would be covered under this. Mm-hmm. But because they want to play politics instead of stand up and govern, we're fighting this fight tooth and nail. It's that little Tea Party faction that's still having a great influence in the legislature.
So obviously, if politics aside, I guess you could say, if we were to have already said, all right, this is what we in Ohio say about the health care issue, would this have already been a done deal? Would we have already been signed and we've been moving on to what we need to get work done?
I would hope so. When you look at all the other states that have adopted Medicaid expansion, because they know it's the moral thing to do, but aside from that, it's the fiscally smart thing to do. It's just so smart when you think of the amount of jobs that the Ohio State University conducted a study, and they said we're going to have 27,000 jobs created by expanding Medicaid. And it's going to bring, I wish I remembered the amount of money, but it was something like $9 billion in revenues over 9 years. I mean, some enormous amount of money that's going to impact our state. It's going to make our state stronger and fiscally healthier. And then those who really want a tax cut just so they can write home and say, look, I got you a tax cut, but they're too lazy to govern enough to know where we're going to cut to pay for that, they can say, we're going to be able to pay for it with this. And it's not going to hurt you. And your police department's still going to be able to get that new police car and still be able to make sure their radios are working and that their dispatcher can be properly trained.
And this is where I come to the next part of that, and you had already brought in, that we have this surplus. Mm-hmm. And that we had been told 2 years ago that the state is in dire need. And we are in dire straits, and we have to have that cut. Local government fund, sorry for your loss, but we have to balance this budget. And now here we are today, about a year and a half, about a year and a half after this. And now we have a magic surplus.
Well, look, this surplus began before before the last budget was passed. We were in the throes of the recession in 2009 when I first took office. We cut $5 billion off of our operating budget. 10%.
That's a hefty chunk, yes.
Yeah. And we accepted one-time funds, but of course so did Governor Kasich in his first budget. He accepted as many as we did. But things were cut, and it was tough.
But wasn't that budget also based off of many of those one-time deals that
Sure.
that we knew weren't going to come back? So why lay so many? Okay, I just want to make sure that everyone understood that.
But we also knew that for us to survive the recession and to come out into the rest of the 21st century in the right direction, we needed to invest in education and technology and infrastructure, and so we did. And we were able to do that. But we still cut $5 billion. So then Governor Kasich comes in, has a $5 or $6 billion increase in the operating budget, and he defunds education. He defunds local governments. He sends money to the pet projects of his wealthy donors and ignores the things that people find most important: education and safety. But while we were debating that first budget, the economy improved so much so that part of Governor Kasich's first budget, he used that improvement to balance his budget. He saw that we were going to have a $2 billion increase in our tax collections because the economy had bottomed out, was coming up.
Sure.
And he used that to balance the budget. He also used $5 billion in one-time funds from the federal government and $500 million from the Affordable Care Act. It is the law of the land, and he used it.
Correct.
So, you move forward. But so when people say, oh, we shouldn't use these one-time funds, we used it when the Dems were in charge. The Republicans used it when they were in charge, and I bet you they use it again. So, but the economy, it takes a while for the economy to move forward, and we saw it moving forward in the first part of my second term when Governor Kasich took office, and it's continued to move forward. Now we have a surplus, but instead of giving it back to the schools and the local governments who lost the money, he's not going to do that.
So, we have this surplus, and it sits. Do we consider this a rainy day fund, or is this a fund of just a pile?
Well, if we were going to govern, they would invest that wisely. But since they are not going to govern, they're just being political. What will happen by law, when it reaches a certain level, it has to be, a tax cut has to occur.
Okay.
And it's an income tax cut, not a sales tax cut. I would prefer to see a sales tax cut.
Wow.
But because that affects the poor and the elderly, and the income tax is, according to your ability to pay. But it's going to be an income tax cut. So, because they're not going to govern. If they were going to govern, they would use that wisely, and they would reinvest in our schools and our local governments. Our state's only as strong as our schools and communities.
We have said that quite often here on the show.
And they're not going to do that. So we do the best we can. But it's going to extend the recession for many Ohioans on a personal level much longer than it needs to.
So I can only imagine then all of the municipalities who are suffering, and I can say the word suffering on that all the work that they're putting into streamlining everything.
Well, they've done that.
And they've done, and
look, when
some are above and beyond.
When you take away 50% of the revenues of townships by eliminating the estate tax, without replacing it.
Again, exactly.
You got to replace it. They can't provide services. Look at Sycamore Township. They used to have 100 and something, maybe 104 firefighters. Now they got like 14. I mean, come on.
And again, we were just learning that 6 minutes is the best time for a response. How can one do that on a 14-man crew?
And like like many other townships and small municipalities, Sycamore Township has had to seek additional revenues through a tax levy. So they've worked that out, and they had to do it because they can't pay for stuff because Governor Kasich took all their money, so they can't do it. So they got to, how much do we want to raise property taxes? When you are retired and you're on a fixed income, you can't afford your property taxes to go up. No. But that's what they're forcing us to do. And I think that's not good for our quality of life. I think it hurts our schools and local communities.
And unfortunately, I think we've seen that. Mm-hmm. And so here we sit. We have to wait. Obviously, there will be your prediction being a few extra things, and come the end of the month, it hopefully will pass at some point.
It'll pass. I mean, unless I don't know what it'll
unless there's some really big discussion.
Yeah, I don't know what it'll look like, but the 4 Republicans on the committee will meet with the governor and they'll argue among themselves and they'll figure it out, and then they'll let the rest of us know.
Well, and then hopefully it will at least let you have a bit of a recess for the summer, and then come back and do some legislative work. But
we usually get August off, and often we'll get July off as well, and then we go back right after Labor Day.
Come back in, just like the kids at school.
We kind of follow the school calendar. That's right. That's right.
But of course, not only is the budget as important to discuss, and it is, another item that we had discussed last time and is still an ongoing discussion is the Jobs Ohio Act. Mm-hmm. And you and a couple of your constituents, Denise Driehaus and Matt Lundy and John Carney,
right, all 4 representatives,
got together and had a press conference to do Job Ohio Accountability Act. Now there's something you don't
this
hear.
is a big scandal.
And that's something you don't...
It's terrible. It's a terrible scandal. Yeah, Jobs Ohio is the public-private entity that took over the Department of Development.
Yes.
They meet with businesses, they help them find business sites and manufacturing sites, they give them tax incentives, they give them grants. This is now a public-private partnership, and it's funded by the liquor distribution profits, which used to fund a lot of other things, including brownfield cleanup, and now it's going to Jobs Ohio. Public money going into Jobs Ohio. And the auditor, God bless him, has been trying to find a way to audit this stuff, the sitting auditor. And I think it's great. But what happened is, seemingly in the middle of the night, an amendment was slipped into another bill which will make it a law in Ohio that this money, this liquor distribution profits, which is controlled by the state, and now goes to Jobs Ohio, by definition, it will not be public money, and therefore no one can audit where it goes.
Now that doesn't sound right to me.
It's not right, but that's what happened. It's terrible, it's terrible policy, and I want to know, what are they hiding? That they have to make this secret. What are they hiding?
And obviously, your outrage, as it should be.
Yeah. See, I like accountability and transparency, and what I hear from my constituents is that they want that too.
Well, you use the word in this act, accountability, something you don't hear a lot in anywhere. I'm not talking just government, I'm talking, I even talk personal life in a lot of people. But that's besides the point.
That's a different topic.
That's a different topic. But here it is to discuss the accountability of this act. Now, obviously, the 4 of you got together and discussed this. How did this come? Obviously, your outrage, obviously, your constituents has some outrage on this. How did this come about, and where are we going with this? And, I mean, to me, it almost sounds pitchforks and torches once again.
Well, I don't ever want anyone to be doing that, but it's their right to wave them around and yell. But look, when the government takes your money, it's your money. When the government takes it from you, you have the right and indeed the obligation to demand to know where it's going. And that's why we have open meetings. That's why all the budget documents are online if anyone really wants to read them. But that's why that's why all the committee hearings are open to the public. And this year they've started broadcasting the Finance Committee hearings as they consider the budget. So you can watch them on the Ohio Channel online. That's why, I mean, it's your money.
This is why we have sunshine laws.
That's right. And I think we have a lot of really good people in government, but clearly there have been some mistakes made. I mean, a classic one was Tom Noe back 8 years ago, which we'll talk about later. But, there are some problems, and so we need to have a watchdog and accountability. That's why my portion of this bill is talking about the Inspector General and making Jobs Ohio accountable to the Inspector General and subject to investigations by the Inspector General. The Inspector General should be an independent, nonpartisan, scrupulously independent, and unbiased investigator. And they should have the opportunity to follow the dollars. We want to know if this money is being used wisely, if it's going to somebody's new Porsche, I want to know. If it's going into a good research startup that's got promise, I want to know that too.
And if it's going to that Porsche, I'd like to drive it at least once.
Well, there you go.
But no,
yeah. Now we can't know. We can't know now. They've made it a law that we don't get to know. And I think that's wrong.
So I'm hoping that I understand this correctly, that through the Accountability Act, we'll be able to reverse some of these, I'll use the word ills, that have occurred to something that Jobs Ohio could have made better.
Yes, it will specifically address a few different issues. One is making sure that meetings are open. Another is giving the state auditor the authority to audit all the funds that originate from public money, just the way the auditor can for the Department of Development. I mean, it's a private agency taking over what used to be a public agency's work. No one ever cried about the auditor auditing that budget before. Even though businesses were coming up and sharing their business plans, and nobody ever cried about it. Nobody's trade secrets were leaked. Nobody's business plan was leaked. It was treated properly. No one cried about that when it was in the Department of Development. Now it just happens to be in a new building, and suddenly it's top secret, and the public doesn't get to know just where the money's going. No one's asking to see trade secrets or business plans. They just want to know, where's the money going?
If I were to hear something like that, and I was a small business, I don't know if I would want to then invest or to come into the state of Ohio. I'm just stating something that sounds very odd, coming from maybe a business standpoint. We're asking many people to try to come to the state. Yeah. We need strong business, and then to have something like that sounds more of a deterrent. Or maybe it's an adherent. I don't know. But it sounds like a deterrent to me. It's
not good government. So, I mean, let's look at it this way. Jason, I want you to give me $1,000. Okay, give it to me. You give it to me. All right, I'm going to take it, and I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to do with it. It's your money, but I'm going to go invest it wisely for you, but you don't get to know what I'm doing with it. That's what this is. That's what that is.
And what good is that going to do?
Well, it's not proper.
No.
It's not like we're, developing military weapons or something that we can't let people know what's going on. This is just economic development activity. So it's a big scandal in my mind.
This started out at the end of the month of May, obviously. Where are we? What do we foresee? Are we making? Is your committee making the proper adjustments so that this act?
We've not had a hearing yet.
Okay.
I anticipate that there will be no hearing provided before the next 18 months, because having a hearing would bring to light what the problems are. Yeah, okay. I'm guessing that they won't let it have a hearing.
And so, obviously, Jobs Ohio.
Because they're hiding something. I just want to know what it is.
And obviously, Jobs Ohio is still going on. It's not as if this is stopping.
Yeah, well, I voted for Jobs Ohio. If having a public-private partnership is going to get people excited about doing business in Ohio and manufacturing in Ohio and locating their distribution centers in Ohio, I'm excited about it too. But that doesn't mean they get to run willy-nilly with tax dollars. They just have to be accountable. I'm sorry. It's because it's public money, there are strings attached. It's called accountability.
Sure.
Because otherwise it's theft.
Best way to put it.
Yeah.
Of course, the last 10 minutes of our hour, I always like to open it up to your favorite topic, veterans topics. And of course, you are.
Yes.
You have a few things. See what happens? I can mention veterans, and I can make her calm down. That stress.
No, I'm so
gone.
excited. So excited.
You should be excited. On our show, excitement is important. No, veterans issues are always important to you, and I always give you that opportunity to discuss what's going on in the veterans world for you in the last couple of weeks since we last spoke.
Well, a couple things. Representative Ann Gonzalez from Westerville was going through old bills and found one that had been introduced my first term by one of my colleagues, Ray Pryor. And after, it passed the House, died in the Senate, and really Ray was not reelected, so it just didn't get picked up. Well, she found it, so she reintroduced it. And it's great. It's going to help military members get back to work if their trade license expires.
Oh,
while they're away.
Okay, that was the issue.
Isn't that a great
I was
one?
wondering, because we talked about that long ago.
Yeah.
And
remember that one?
Yeah, I do.
It's great. So it passed the House pretty quickly. Zipped right through. I tried to offer an amendment to help the military spouses get back to get to work more quickly with a temporary license when they move here on a military transfer. That was rejected along party lines because a Democrat introduced the amendment. However, the good news is that that's going to be picked up in the Senate. Senator Frank LaRose is working on that for me. And so, Senator Bill Seitz, my senator, liked the bill. In fact, a few years ago we were talking about my amendment. He's the one who told me I ought to do this amendment. So I did, and we couldn't get it in the House, but he's gonna accept it in the Senate and try to put it in that bill in the Senate.
Well, we like having Bill over here, so maybe we should.
Yeah, well, it's nice to see
that
he likes his own idea. So that's good. So that's really exciting. So we're helping active duty and veterans and their families get back to work more quickly. We had talked about helping the civilian half of a military couple get unemployment when she or he quits a job due to a military transfer. They put it into the budget.
Excellent, because we weren't certain of that the last time we spoke. So
it looks like it's going to stay in. I talked to Senator Bill Coley, who's in Butler County. I talked to him, and he said we're going to keep that in. We've made a couple tweaks, but they're very reasonable. They have like a 6-month limit on the benefits, which is fine, because most military spouses will get a job within 6 to 9 months. And so but the help it gives to those families, it's really, really good. So we're really excited about that. I've just introduced a bill to help us get the veterans bonus to those who haven't applied yet.
And we've been discussing that for almost over a year now, and we're still looking for veterans to gain their bonus.
Well, not everybody gets the briefing when they get out.
Sure.
Or maybe they don't pay attention, or the briefing's not given. Who knows why? Or they're unaware, or maybe they don't think they're qualified. So the last year for veterans of the Persian Gulf War is this year. They've got to apply by the end of December 2013. So time is running out. And for veterans from Iraq, 2014. So we have some deadlines. Afghanistan, I'm assuming we'll have about 3 more years because we're pulling out now.
Sure.
But so it's a really simple bill. It says when you're filling out your Ohio tax return, if you want, you can check a little box that says you're a veteran. And
that helps apply to.
Yeah, and that you served during these conflicts. And we'll connect them with the Department of Veteran Services and make sure they know that they can apply for their bonus.
Well, that definitely makes it easy for them. So that's
Yeah.
great.
And I met some veterans. I was up in North Canton, Ohio. There was a women veterans event at this place called the 386 Fighter Group. It's a defunct Air National Guard base, and which is a really cool place. If anybody stops by there, they've got the whole everything set up like it was an old base. They got the guard shack. They got trucks and jeeps, and they've got sandbags to help bolster the reinforcements and stuff. It's really pretty fun. But I met some veterans of Iraq who didn't know, some women veterans who 20-year military didn't know that they were eligible for this bonus, and some that had gotten it and thanked me for it. And say it came at the best time. They were just having a really tough spot, and it helped them immeasurably. So, you know, there's a lot of people who still need to know about it, and there are women veterans everywhere and male veterans all over the state who should qualify.
Well, it looks like you're making the right moves, and it's good to hear that some of these things have gone through.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, speaking of gone through, we've gone through our hour already, and
Okay.
we knew that would happen. But of
Yeah.
course, if you have any more questions, concerns, want to raise some issues with Ms. Pillich, you can do so very easily. You can write her an actual letter, yes, hand paper to paper, 77 South High Street on the 10th floor in Columbus, 43215. You can give her a call at 614-466-8120, or use that handy-dandy schmancy new email, that's rep28 at ohiohouse.gov,
Yeah.
which, you know, we've been fighting for years for that email to change.
Yeah, finally. And I do have my office hours once or twice a month. This
Yes.
morning I was in Springdale. I can't tell you where I'm going to be. I think 2 weeks from now I'm thinking I'm going to be in Forest Park. But people can go to my website, ConniePillich.com. They can find me on Facebook. They can find me on Twitter. And I usually announce ahead of time when I'm having them. And I do issue a press release. I try to get it into the community press
Sure.
to let people know where I'll be. So please, I hope people come and see me.
Well, it'd be great to have some people out there to do so. So, Representative Pillich, thank you for joining us as always.
It's my pleasure.
Glad
Thank
you could be here. And of course, I want to thank all of you for joining us as well. You want to join something that's fun and exciting and be a part of something that's good? Waycross Community Media may just be that place for you. 825-2429 is our phone number here. You might be able to join in with one of our crowds, maybe even do a program of your own. Whatever the choice is yours, and make it a good one. I'm Jason Grzgorek, Waycross Community Media's Government Access Coordinator. We've been sitting here at the round table on the Columbus Report, letting you have that opportunity to find out what's going on in your state. I'll be back next month. Of course, my summer break does not happen, but I'll be here to join in with all the information for you to get. Until then, take care.